you. You know, it's interesting how life happens. I was kind of surprised, Sam Brawley, that he didn't tell me this, but he's kind of hiding from all of us. Well, he's not really hiding. He's a wonderful person, yet he has a lot of money. A lot of money. Just didn't show him. So I expect a bigger donation today, actually, during church. Thank you. Sorry I found you out. But I saw this story about him the other day. He went to Africa, and he's got, you know how, and everybody does know that Sam and Judy like animals. Well, he has a dachshund that has always been his favorite. And he took the dachshund to Africa with him on this safari. And not there 24 hours, and the dachshund goes chasing butterflies. And sooner, more than later, the dachshund realizes that it's lost and doesn't know its way back to camp. Well, Sam's out looking for it, but to no avail. Pretty soon, the dachshund's just, looking around and sees this leopard. And the leopard is looking around for a meal. And the dachshund sits there thinking, oh my, I hope that leopard doesn't see me. So the dachshund's pretty smart, starts creeping back to trying to get away from the leopard. Well, the leopard sees the dachshund, and the dachshund sees the leopard seeing the dachshund. And the dachshund thinks, what am I going to do? The leopard starts coming toward the dachshund, and the dachshund finds a pile of bones and sits by the pile of bones. And right as the leopard's about to leap, the dachshund says out loud, this leopard sure is good. I hope another one comes along. And the leopard stops in its tracks and says, oh, I better not try to get this dachshund because he eats leopards. So while this happened, the monkey was in the trees. And the monkey saw what was going on and said, you know what? I can use that to my advantage because that leopard's been trying to get me for a long time. So the monkey chases down, the leopard's gone by now, but chases down the leopard and says to the leopard, there it is, actually. Says to the leopard, says what happens, that dachshund fooled you. That dachshund didn't eat no leopard. He can't eat no leopards. He fooled you into thinking that. Doesn't that make you mad? I'm helping you. Can't we work out a deal? And the leopard says to the monkey, says, yeah, I'm not going to eat you. We're going to go get that dachshund, though, I tell you right now. We're going to get him because I'm mad, very mad. And so starts running back toward the dachshund, where the dachshund was. The dachshund's already in a different place, but the leopard's smart, finds the dachshund. And the dachshund knows that he can't get rid of the leopard now. And so he finds another pile of bones and sits there right in front of him and says, as the leopard's about to pounce again, I wonder if that monkey that I sent out to get me another leopard is going to come back pretty quick. That was the part of the joke that was funny. Sam, give me that donation, okay? Thank you, sir. Okay, it's not to me, it's to the church. All right, let's say our statements of truth together, please.
I am a child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now.
Well, it's funny how titles come to you sometimes. But today's lesson is titled, Life's Hard, Get Harder. And it has to do with, of course, well, it doesn't have to do with it right now, but it is 4th of July weekend, and so it has to do a lot with independence. And so when we think of Independence Day, 4th of July, some of us have been around a long time for the 4th of July, a lot of 4th of July, some of us are experiencing just a few of them. But when you think of Independence Day, what comes to your mind? Anybody just shout it out. One of them. Fireworks.
Cookouts.
What? Cookouts. Freedom. Who said freedom? A couple people.
The flag.
The flag.
Parades.
People fighting and dying so we can have our freedom.
Yeah, people fighting and dying so we can have our freedom. Somebody else said something.
Parades.
Parades, that's what they said. Hey, we had one yesterday, wasn't it? I didn't know it until after I saw them gathering for it.
One in Oxford on the 4th.
One in Oxford on the 4th, and in Social Circle on the 4th too. But anyway, we think of all those things with Independence Day, and we sometimes forget, though, when we're thinking about all the activities going on, that the independence that we're talking about really is freedom. It's freedom, and the freedom that we have in this country, though, didn't come free, obviously. We had to get it by being a little bit rough, killing some people, didn't we? I mean, in the history books we can read it and know it for our own self that we broke away from another type of country that we didn't agree with. And so, today we've got a lot of things that we do in our own life. We made a bunch of laws here to try to to make it fairer for people, how we saw it when we came over here. We, meaning the people, the pioneers, the Christopher Columbus people, all those people made it when they came over here. And over the years, we've changed laws and tried to make it fairer for everybody. But how many people in here break the law on a consistent basis? Well, okay, see, the lawyer raises his hand first. That's funny. Well, because he knows the law and he knows that's the way it is. Everybody should be raising their hand on this. And I'm going to raise my hand on this one is, how many change lanes without using their signal? Okay, who didn't raise their hand on that? Hey, Georgia people, I tell you. How many people, I'm sorry, that changing lanes that's one of my pet peeves, somebody cutting me off and then not without a turn signal. If they cut me off with a turn signal, I don't care. But anyway, so there are some other examples I have, but a lot of people, of course, in Kansas is jayhawkers. So when I talk about jaywalking, I always think of Kansas, but how many people jaywalk? Walk without being on a crosswalk.
Of course.
Yeah, a lot of people have. I mean, it's not a big deal really, but those are laws. And if a police officer saw you and decided to enforce that law, he or she couldn't they?
Yep.
They could write you a ticket and you'd have to pay a fine. Well, there are some things, though, that we left, laws like that we thought were oppressive from England, that we left for, right? We wanted to be, in fact, somebody on the radio, I don't remember who it was, somebody might have heard it also, was saying some of the letter that we wrote to the King of England at the time about how it said we're separating from you because your government is not treating us right. We don't have any say in our local things and all these reasons of why we decided to assemble and create this country. Well, one of the reasons was obviously a religious reason, wasn't it? The king. There's the Church of England is the official state church of England at the time, and it was enforced at the time. You were to worship this, and this is what you're to worship. And that came about, from our history and religion too. Is you remember Constantinople, or Constantine rather, which that city was named after him, but the Roman emperor that made Christianity the state religion and the one that you're supposed to follow. Before that, the Romans didn't care. They said the more gods the merrier, as long as you worship with us and pay the tolls or whatever, not tolls, but the fees to the Roman government. Well, so we left that, though. The American people, the soon-to-be American people, left that because they didn't want those restrictions on them. They're being told how to worship, how to live their life, so they made their own laws and everything. Well, we know about that. Freedom of religion is one of them. And it's even in the First Amendment. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Boy, we forget that a lot, that's the First Amendment, don't we? Freedom of religion. I mean, even I am guilty sometimes of coming up here and saying, whoever does it wrong, we do it in unity right. And everybody has some right in it, though, don't they? I mean, they have something good, or else people wouldn't be attracted to them and come to a certain religious sect. But freedom of religion is one of the reasons that we founded this country, and it's important because our religious rights should never be infringed on. And sometimes we think that they are being infringed on. But the way that they get infringed on as a society is by society collapsing around the religion. Let me explain that a little bit. Our political process here has been unique in democracy for a long time, of course, and we sometimes try to spread that around the world. And in your opinion or mine, doesn't make a difference. Where sometimes we don't need to probably try to force our opinion on someone because that's not what we believe in. We believe in everybody having their own opinion. But sometimes in our country right now, especially, we see a lot of things that are going on in our political process that has changed. Now, we've had times anybody remembers the times of Nixon and then even in Carter, we had different tumultuous times in our political history. Yet we've switched a little bit now where it's more common now to be attacking a person instead of their ideas. We were founded on, if you'll remember, the founding fathers were here when they talked politics, when they talked these laws, when they were talking and discussing these, there were different viewpoints. A lot of different viewpoints. But what happened is we talked about those viewpoints one to another, may have disagreed totally with each other and not like their viewpoint. But it didn't go to the point where I don't like you because of your viewpoint. And today we're getting to a point where it says, I do not like you because of your viewpoint. That can ruin our whole independence. It can ruin your freedom. Because if somebody comes to power and says, well, as long as 51% of people agree with me on one thing, and I can get power because of that, then I can change everything. And we can make it this way. You've got to go to church here, because this is the best for you, because I know what's best for you. Well, that's not, and it's funny because I tell you all the time that the Bible has everything in it that has happened to humankind and that ever will, because it's just a wonderful book about the human experience. But that's not what I'm going to tell you about right now. I'm going to tell you about a story that has to do with a Hispanic gentleman this story goes on for probably the last 30, 40 years. But he was raised in a financially poor family, but figured out through friends and everything how to make money. And he became very wealthy. He had a lot of kids, and he had a beautiful wife, and he was just enjoying the heck out of life. Well, one day, about 10 years ago, he had something pretty bad happen to him. He had about 4 or 5 different businesses. And what had happened was somebody or something had happened where all his businesses were burnt the same night. Burnt to the ground. Everything that he had in those businesses was gone. And then he found out later that, because he was bragging about it, some person had done it with him and his friends, and the law didn't hear about it, but it was, on the street how you hear things, had done it because he didn't like he was of Hispanic descent. And so he's wondering why somebody would do that. But he thought, well, I've been very religious. I've been very grateful in my life for all that I've received, and I've followed this path because I've chosen to follow God in this path to become wealthy. That's no problem. I can become wealthy again because he didn't have insurance or anything. Well, he was... I've got to step back a little bit. I apologize. The reason the guy targeted him was because when he was successful, the local news people came out and did an interview with him, and that's how he was noticed. It was on the TV because he was being successful. And so, of course, he was on television again. The news, though, about him, his business is burning. But he said on television again that, I am going to continue on my path, my spiritual path, because I know that isn't going to stop anything. But that's just something that I did because of who and what I am as far as a religious or spiritual person. Well, he started building his businesses back up. But that guy that didn't like him because he was Hispanic, he was a hood, or a, what? Thug, yeah. Whatever you want to call it. No. He was a guy that didn't think that well. And didn't do that good as far as being nice to people. But he was part of a local gang. And so he saw that second interview, though, on television and knew that the guy still wasn't letting that bother him as far as internally and going forward to become wealthy again. Well, so what the thug did was he went out and he murdered his children. And after he murdered his children, of course, that hurt the Hispanic gentleman. Hurt him deeply. He didn't want his children hurt or anybody, and especially he couldn't understand why. So what he did was he, still was very religious and very looking toward, what he could do as far as serving other people in his community. Yet the guy was still free. The guy that did this. Because the local authorities had no evidence to prove it was him, even though he bragged about it. So he went on with the Hispanic gentleman went on with his life a little bit, and he still was going to his local church and was very prominent in it and very willing to say, I'm still following this path. Well, that wasn't in the news. The killings were, but that wasn't in the news that he's going back, continuing on the spiritual path. But for some reason, the guy still wanted to tear him down. And so he came and he killed his wife when they weren't together once. And so the guy had nothing at all as far as what he was thinking, except his spiritual beliefs. But he came to question those beliefs after his wife was murdered. And he questioned them so much that he just thought, why? Why do I have to endure this kind of pain when I love these people so much and they've been taken away from me? Why do I have to endure that pain? And he questioned his belief in God. His friends came by, three of his friends who didn't live in the same town, came by to comfort him and noticed that he was so hurt and so, deeply depressed that they really couldn't pick him up. So they picked him up as far as talking to him because he really wasn't listening. And so what they did, those three friends, was just sit there and pray with him and prayed for him when they weren't with him. They could only stay a while. Of course, if you live somewhere else and you got a life of your own, you can't stay there even though you want to help your friend. You can't stay there forever. So they had to go back to their respective homes, even though the gentleman was not out of his depression. And so he continued to question his spiritual path, his beliefs. And he questioned it for quite a while. And then some people that had known him that weren't, they were okay friends, but they weren't, as close as those three that were out of town, came to him and said, you have had a wonderful life. Why don't you just try to pick it up? I know it's hard, but why don't you try to pick it up? He had none of that, of course, and said, no, I've had my time, now I have to suffer because I have not done whatever I needed to do. I wasn't doing it right to get this done, to live this continual prosperous life, prosperous meaning a lot of things, not only money. But then some other people came to him later and said, you know what? You deserve worse than this. Because you have decided now that just because things have been taken away from you, these were friends thinking they were trying to help him. Just because you've had this thing taken away, all this thing's taken away from you, that you can just quit life. And you can't. But his belief, his understanding of his spiritual path was not at where it was before. It's always easy for us when things are going well. It's always easiest for us to say, "Oh, I give credit to this or that," whether it's religious or not. But I get a lot of people that are religious. When things are going good, sometimes they will say, "I give credit to this." Sometimes they'll go, "Oh, I did it myself." But no, he wasn't that way. He knew that he gave credit for his his spiritual understanding that we are one with God, that we are one in the universe, and that there's no limitation. But he was still not going to have any of that. So the guy said, you deserve worse because you have quit on life. You have quit on the things that you believe in. And of course, that didn't really pick him up at all. He was trying to, because the other guys weren't able to do that, but it didn't work. So what he did is the guy ended up just taking time. It took time for him to figure out that, I have to do something. So he slowly started going back to church, started listening to the things that he believed in before, started allowing God to be in his life again, and he started having a little bit of a life. Nothing like it was before. It takes time to do all that. You can't replace a family. You can't, you may have a new family, but you can't replace a family. You hear what I'm saying? Those people are gone as far as physically. So he ended up starting just working for someone. He didn't own businesses now. He was working for someone. He met another person in church, and he ended up getting married again. And he slowly started doing things that were not really for him to build up businesses like he had before, but were for the community and ended up making him a better person for it. Well, he did end up having a lot more kids with his wife. And he was blessed. He's feeling so blessed. So he just continued going down this path. You know, you remember this guy that did all this to him is still out and free and all that. But he continued on this path, and he decided, you know what? The guy that told me that I deserved this was really right. And the guys that told me, my real good friends from out of town that told me that I need to pick myself up and continue on in life were right too. You know, I don't have, as far as the Hispanic man was saying, I don't have the right to worry about if a person did this to me, that I have to try to get revenge or he should pay or whatever happened should get vengeance. I don't need to go there. That's a waste of my time. So he continued to just, live life and was enjoying again with his wife and his new wife and his children until those three, a lot of people in the community then, the news got a hold of it again. And what had happened was the news had done a kind of a documentary on him. It wasn't an hour-long show, but it was a news program. And it said, this is what happened to this, and he's recovered. Upon seeing that story, people of the community that he had helped throughout those years when he had all those things, brought things to him. And gave him more than what he had before. More than what he had before. Of course, things weren't what he was looking for, but he had a new family. He was doing the best he could right now. And believe it or not, the story ends there. And we wonder sometimes, well, you know what? What's the moral of the story? He had something happen to him, or he had a great life that we would all think was great, and he had it taken from him, really unjustly. But what is the moral? And he ended up figuring out that he can go back or start again and just have a life that serves other people. So, and other people have, yes,
You should read Job.
that's the story.
Oh.
That is the story, dear.
Oh.
You're so good. He should read Job, she said. That is the story. But even Job, the guy that, people forget that the majority of that book is written about how he decided, he questioned his belief. I don't know about you, it's kind of like breaking the law, I think, and I think that you hopefully, I don't know. I'm just going to ask the question. I would think everybody would raise their hand, though, is how many people have ever questioned their faith? I mean, there are times when just as a physical being with our human brain, that we question the idea of a higher being. And see, in unity, we know that it's not a higher being, that it's God up there on his throne just judging me all the time. We know that that's not true. Even in unity, we question sometimes, how can God be everywhere and I be suffering? You see, the thing about Job is, the book of Job does not tell you the reason for that. It's something that we have to figure out ourselves. And why is that? I mean, I can tell you the answer, but it's my answer. You hear me? It may not be the same answer for you. Why do good people suffer? That's the whole question that people ask themselves, at least biblical scholars, after they read Job. Why do good people suffer? Because Job was a good person, wasn't it? Job was a guy, and so was this Hispanic guy. He was a good person. Did good things with his money. Did good things with his life. Yet he was punished. That's sometimes where we get into trouble. We think that he was punished. Because when we say he was punished, we're thinking, God punished him. Or if you know the story, the devil was talking to God. And the devil was allowed to punish him. Or to test his faith in God. And sometimes we think that we're being tested too. When in this life, what happens is we have a collective consciousness, don't we? And collective consciousness means, what I like to use is Fillmore's phrase, is race consciousness. And it doesn't have anything to do with a guy being Hispanic and somebody not liking him because of the color of his skin. Race consciousness has to do with all of the human race, what they're thinking. And I'll tell you what happens, why, and this is a metaphysical answer, I know, but it is the truth, as far as why sometimes bad things happen to good people. Our race consciousness builds up like a cloud. You know how the earth gets too much water in it, and or rather the body of water will evaporate up into a cloud, and then it will move. What happens with the cloud? It moves until it gets enough water, then what happens? It rains, doesn't it? Well, there are good thought clouds, and there are not so good thought clouds. But we've created them. We have created them. And sometimes, no matter who you are, a bad thought cloud can be above you and start pouring down. No matter who you are. I was out mowing the lawn that last week in Atlanta. What happened to me? I got wet. I was mowing all day, but I was soaked. I'm hoping that's a good thought cloud that was on me, in front of me, on top of me. But the point is if we as a society continue to say, I don't like you because of what you think, that's going to be our downfall. That's what we came from. And I'm not saying England's bad, okay? Don't hear me say that. But that's what we as Americans came from, to have what? Freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom in other ways also. You know, when we jaywalk or we change lanes without a turn signal, if we get caught and we get a ticket, we don't go in front of a judge and they say, you know what, I don't like the way you look, I don't like the way you are, 50 years to life. You know, they don't, do they here? Well, there's a reason. It's because we have some guidelines to go by. It's the way we treat each other. But if we change the way we treat each other, just because we disagree, which, by the way, there's not a person in here that you can pick out. I don't care if you're married or not. And if you're married, you already know this. But I don't care how close you think you are to that person, that you're going to agree with that person on every single thing. Nobody in the world is going to be like that. Oh, you guys, I know you love each other, but you don't agree with everything. And actually, you know what? It's the funniest times those show up sometimes. It's not really funny sometimes, but it's the oddest times those differences show up sometimes in a marriage, don't they? I was running for a political campaign in 2000, and a key issue in the political campaign, Francie and I disagreed on. Ooh, it was a big thing too in Kansas, let me tell you. Ooh. And it was interesting. So we have to have those type of discussions. Even, you know, we all like to get, sometimes, I hope we don't all, I know, but it seems like society right now is getting on to where we love to blame whoever's the political person that we don't like. Well, some of those people are good people. That's one thing I really did enjoy about politics is I met the most wonderful people. We didn't agree on everything, but I met the wonderful people. You know, I guess I'm not perfect, because I still think about the guy who defeated me in a close race, sending out that lying flyer at the end, when I refused to do it. You know, so people can say things about you, whether they're true or not. They can disagree with you. But just think for a moment that in order to keep our freedom for everybody, we have to be able to have a difference of opinion and still be able to get along with that person. And it's not tolerance. I mean, I've told you before, I don't really care for the word tolerance because that means you're putting up with someone. We have to learn to like someone that disagrees with us. That's harder than it sounds, and maybe you know that already, but sometimes that can be hard. So this Independence Day, I think you're clapping? Okay, good. So this Independence Day, I want each of us to understand that we have choices of faith where we put God in our life. Do we put God on Sunday morning? Yeah. Those of us that come to church and those of us that watch online, or hi, those of you that watch online, those of you that just put your faith on Sunday morning or whenever you regularly worship, yes, we put God first in our life. We're thinking about it. We're figuring out how that works in our life. But Monday through Saturday, or whenever you're not at church, how often do we put God first in our life? Or how does God work in our life? Not necessarily first, but how does God work in our life? When I got that call at whatever time it was in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday night when Grace was having, or had her baby, how did I put God first? Or God in that situation? There's a lot of ways to do that. So the question is, I guess, are we ready to put God in our life, in everything in our life? Even when we're mad about that guy that cut me off without using his turn signal. Are we ready to do that?
Yes.
I hope so. In 2 days, it's going to be the 4th of July. I'm sure that we're all going to enjoy some type of fireworks, whether it's on TV or outside. And hopefully we'll think of the freedom that we have that not everybody is afforded in the world. But we are along with them in our race consciousness to see them becoming free to worship how they wish to worship. Not so we can agree with them on everything, but so we all know that we are one. Because when we know that, if I think that Dale is one with me, or if I think that, then I will be hesitant on doing anything negative toward Dale, won't I? If I know that, that wouldn't even cross my mind. I would never do anything to harm Dale or to think negative toward Dale. Of course, that comes back to loving ourselves, doesn't it? All this oneness has to do with everything in life, because oneness is God, isn't it? So this 4th of July, let's just think about not only our freedom here in this country, but the freedom that we have to think what we want to think and to live the life that we want to live. Agreed?
Agree.
Amen.